11 hidden signs. Thought that keeps you anxious and how to control. Have you ever felt your mind racing even when nothing's wrong? That strange restlessness that appears in the quiet moments when life seems calm but your heart refuses to believe it? It's the silent tension that creeps in at night, the invisible pressure that tightens your chest for no reason at all. Most people call it anxiety. But anxiety isn't always the enemy. It's often the language of a mind trying to protect you, even when the threat no longer exists. You see, the human brain wasn't designed for constant peace. It was designed for survival. Your ancestors didn't have the luxury of calm. They had to anticipate danger to stay alive. Over thousands of years, that vigilance became part of your biology. But now the world has changed, and your mind hasn't caught up. It still scans for threats that no longer exist, rehearses disasters that never happen, and creates tension where there is no danger. That's why anxiety feels so real, because your brain doesn't distinguish between what's imagined and what's happening right now. This video isn't about fighting anxiety. It's about understanding it, because when you understand it, you stop feeding it. You begin to see that anxiety isn't random. It's a pattern of thoughts, repeated so often that they've carved deep neurological grooves in your brain. These are the hidden thoughts, silent, automatic beliefs that run beneath your awareness, shaping how you feel, how you react, and how you see yourself. They're like invisible code, programs you didn't write, but that run your entire emotional operating system. According to neuroscience, every thought is a signal, an electrical impulse that releases a cascade of chemicals in your brain. When you repeat the same anxious thought, your neurons wire together, strengthening that loop. It's the principle of neuroplasticity. What fires together, wires together. Your brain literally builds anxiety into its structure. But the same process that created the problem can also create the solution. You can rewrite the code. You can train your mind to recognize the thought patterns that keep you trapped and replace them with clarity, control, and calm. As Descartes once said, the greatest minds are capable of the greatest vices as well as the greatest virtues. Your mind has the power to imprison you, but also the power to free you. When you begin to observe your thoughts instead of obeying them, you take back command of your consciousness. You shift from being a victim of your mind to being its master. This isn't about pretending you're fine. It's about seeing clearly what's happening inside you. As Jordan Peterson would say, anxiety thrives in chaos and diminishes in structure. When you bring order to your thoughts, you reduce fear. And as Andrew Huberman reminds us, the body and the brain are inseparable. Every breath, every posture, every microaction sends feedback that shapes your emotional state. So, as we begin this journey, I want you to imagine this. Your anxiety isn't an enemy, it's a signal. A misunderstood message from your nervous system, asking for your attention, not your judgment. Beneath every restless night and racing thought lies an opportunity for awareness. And today, we'll uncover those 11 hidden thoughts that have been quietly scripting your anxiety and learn how to take control before they take control of you. The inner trap. Why your brain feeds on anxiety. Anxiety isn't just a feeling, it's a cycle, a neurological feedback loop that your brain has learned to depend on. You might think you want peace, but part of your nervous system is addicted to alertness. It interprets calm as danger, silence as risk, and stillness as a sign that something's about to go wrong. The truth is that anxiety often isn't caused by the events in your life, but by how your brain has been conditioned to interpret them. Every time you anticipate a problem, your brain releases a small burst of dopamine, the neurotransmitter responsible for motivation and focus. It's the same chemical that drives excitement and curiosity. But when tied to fear, dopamine becomes the fuel of worry. It rewards you for scanning for danger, for mentally rehearsing everything that could go wrong. It gives you a false sense of control. That's why overthinking feels productive. It mimics the illusion of preparation, even when it's destroying your peace. This cycle strengthens through repetition. Each moment of worry teaches your brain that vigilance equals safety. When cortisol joins the process, the stress hormone that keeps your body on high alert, you start to live in a state of constant readiness. You might feel like you're just being responsible, but biologically, you're trapped in survival mode. Over time, this becomes your baseline. Calm feels foreign, even threatening. It's not that you can't relax. It's that your brain has mistaken relaxation for danger. Andrew Huberman explains that the human nervous system is designed to detect and respond to patterns. When those patterns are filled with fear and uncertainty, your amygdala, the emotional center of the brain, becomes hypersensitive. It begins to fire even in the absence of real threats. The brain, craving consistency, keeps repeating the cycle because familiarity feels safer than change. The same mechanism that once protected your ancestors from predators now traps you in invisible cages built by your own thoughts. Marcus Aurelius once wrote, "Today I escaped anxiety, or no, I discarded it, because it was within me, in my own perceptions, not outside." Those words echo through time because they point to the same truth modern neuroscience confirms. The problem isn't life, it's perception. Your mind builds the world it sees. Anxiety feeds on interpretation, not reality. The moment you shift the meaning of what happens to you, the loop begins to lose power. Your first step out of this trap isn't control, it's awareness. You can't dismantle what you don't see. The next moments we share will reveal the hidden thoughts that keep this cycle alive, beliefs so subtle that they disguise themselves as logic, responsibility, or self-discipline. But beneath them lies the real engine of anxiety, unchallenged mental assumptions that have never been questioned. And once you see them clearly, everything begins to change. The 11 hidden thoughts that control you. The most powerful thoughts are the ones you never notice. They slip beneath language, disguised as logic, disguised as truth. You don't question them because they sound reasonable, even responsible. Yet these invisible assumptions shape every emotion, every decision, and every restless night. They are the silent architects of anxiety. To control your anxiety, you must first bring these hidden thoughts into the light, because what remains unconscious rules you completely. The first hidden thought is, if I'm calm, I'll lose control. Many people associate tension with readiness. They believe that letting go means becoming careless. But this belief is backwards. Control born from anxiety is fragile. Control born from clarity is unshakable. When you're calm, you make decisions from the prefrontal cortex, the rational brain, not from the amygdala's panic. Calm doesn't mean losing control. It means finally being in command. The second hidden thought is, if I prepare for the worst, I'll stay safe. This is anxiety disguised as intelligence. Your brain tricks you into believing that constant vigilance protects you. But in truth, this habit only programs your nervous system to live in a state of emergency. Preparation is useful. Obsession is toxic. The mind addicted to anticipating disaster never experiences peace, only survival. The third hidden thought is, if I stop thinking, I'll forget something important. This is the loop of hypervigilance. The anxious mind mistakes rest for danger and silence for irresponsibility. But the brain needs pauses to process information. Without rest, thoughts lose accuracy. Mental clarity isn't achieved through constant activity. It's born from rhythm, from the alternation between focus and release. The fourth hidden thought is, if I rest, I'm being lazy. Productivity trauma has taught millions to equate self-worth with exhaustion. But rest isn't the opposite of effort. It's the fuel that makes effort possible. When you deny rest, your body floods with cortisol, your dopamine system crashes, and your emotional balance collapses. Real strength requires recovery. The fifth hidden thought is, if I'm not perfect, I'll be abandoned. This belief comes from early emotional conditioning, the idea that love must be earned through flawlessness. Perfection becomes protection. But perfectionism is the most socially accepted form of anxiety. It makes peace impossible because it makes self-acceptance conditional. The sixth hidden thought is, if I speak up, I'll cause conflict. You learn to stay silent to avoid discomfort. Yet silence breeds resentment, and resentment feeds anxiety. The body knows when it's suppressing truth. Your pulse rises, your chest tightens. Authentic expression isn't conflict, it's clarity. The seventh hidden thought is, if I don't fix it, no one will. The savior complex. It feels noble, but it's driven by fear. The fear of things falling apart without your control. Responsibility is healthy. Over-responsibility is imprisonment. The weight of the world doesn't belong on your shoulders. The eighth hidden thought is, if I don't stay alert, something bad will happen. This is the residue of trauma, the body trapped in constant fight or flight. It's an outdated survival script. You can't protect yourself from life by living on guard. Hypervigilance is not awareness. It's exhaustion disguised as duty. The ninth hidden thought is, if I show emotion, I'll look weak. Strength isn't suppression, it's integration. Emotional honesty activates the parasympathetic nervous system, the body's natural calm response. Denying emotion doesn't make you stronger, it disconnects you from reality. The 10th hidden thought is, if I let go, I'll lose myself. Control often becomes identity. You fear surrender because you confuse it with disappearance. But letting go isn't erasing yourself, it's trusting yourself. It's allowing space for what is, instead of fighting everything that could be. The 11th hidden thought is, if I change, people won't recognize me. Deep down, you fear that healing will cost you belonging, but the people meant for your growth will rise with you. The rest are simply attached to your old wounds. Change doesn't erase connection. It purifies it. These 11 thoughts are not enemies. They're unexamined defenses built long ago to protect you from pain. But now, they imprison you in fear. Awareness dissolves their power. The more you see them, the less they control you. And once you start questioning them, your mind begins to rebuild itself, neuron by neuron, belief by belief. The next step is learning how to rewire these patterns, biologically, emotionally, and mentally, using the same mechanisms that once created them, the science of breaking the loop. Anxiety isn't a mystery, it's a system, a neurochemical rhythm your brain has practiced for so long that it now runs automatically. But here's the truth most people never learn. What was learned can be unlearned. The same biology that builds anxiety can also dismantle it. The difference lies in awareness, repetition, and intentional rewiring. Neuroscientists call it neuroplasticity, the brain's ability to reorganize itself through experience. Every time you think a thought, a network of neurons fires together. The more often it fires, the stronger it becomes, forming what psychologists call a default pattern. When you constantly worry, your brain becomes efficient at producing fear. It treats anxiety as normal because you've rehearsed it for years. But neuroplasticity works both ways. The moment you begin interrupting that pattern, the brain starts to weaken the old pathways and strengthen new ones that lead toward calm. Andrew Huberman often explains this through the principle of state training. Your mental state teaches your nervous system what to expect. If you repeatedly shift from tension to awareness, your body learns that it's safe to relax. The physiological sigh, a simple double inhale through the nose, followed by a long exhale, signals your nervous system that the threat has passed. It lowers cortisol and resets your heart rate. It's a biological code for safety. Practicing it daily teaches your body a new normal, peace. But rewiring isn't just biological, it's cognitive. This is where cognitive behavioral therapy, CBT, enters the equation. CBT helps you identify distorted thought patterns, challenge their logic, and replace them with grounded reasoning. For example, when you think, if I'm not constantly alert, something bad will happen, pause Ask, is this thought based on fact or fear? Then consciously replace it with, being alert all the time doesn't prevent problems, it prevents peace. Every time you correct a thought, you reprogram your brain's prediction model. Over time, these corrections accumulate, transforming chaos into clarity. Joe Dispenza adds another layer. Emotion is the bridge between thought and biology. When you think with intensity, your body reacts chemically, turning ideas into states. The anxious mind floods itself with stress hormones, training the body to live in emergency. But when you generate emotions of calm and gratitude, you trigger serotonin and endorphins, the chemistry of stability. The brain begins to associate peace with safety again. That's how you reverse the loop, not through force, but through new associations. Rewiring anxiety requires patience because your brain resists change. It interprets peace as unfamiliar and therefore dangerous. This is why most people relapse into worry, not because they fail, but because their nervous system doesn't yet recognize calm as home. The key is consistency. Repetition builds recognition, and recognition builds trust. Over time, your brain learns that serenity doesn't mean vulnerability, it means balance. Aristotle said that excellence is not an act, but a habit. The same applies to peace. Each time you choose awareness over reaction, structure over chaos, you're not just controlling anxiety, you're transforming the architecture of your mind. The storm quiets, not because it disappears, but because you've learned to stand in it differently. And once you've rewired the loop, a deeper truth emerges, that calm isn't the absence of emotion, but the presence of understanding. This is where philosophy meets neuroscience, and where your transformation truly begins. The Stoic shift, philosophy of calm. Real calm isn't passive, it's power mastered through understanding. The Stoics knew this long before science could measure it. Marcus Aurelius, the philosopher-emperor, wrote that we suffer more in imagination than in reality. Modern neuroscience confirms it. The amygdala, the brain's fear center, reacts not to the event itself, but to our interpretation of it. The body trembles not because life is unbearable, but because the mind hasn't yet learned how to separate thought from truth. When you experience anxiety, your brain's ancient circuitry fires as if a predator were near. But today, the predators are mental. The unfinished task, the uncertain future, the silent judgment of others. The Stoic discipline of perception, the ability to pause before reacting, gives your prefrontal cortex time to regain control from the amygdala. It's not suppression, it's leadership. You teach your nervous system that awareness, not panic, defines safety. Seneca described calm as a form of rational courage, the capacity to face chaos without surrendering clarity. This idea mirrors Andrew Huberman's explanation of the physiological balance between the sympathetic and parasympathetic systems. When you slow your breathing, straighten your posture, and re-anchor your focus, you send a message up through the vagus nerve. I am safe. The brain listens. Chemistry shifts. Cortisol lowers. Dopamine stabilizes. Calm becomes a physical reality, not just a wish. To live by this philosophy means replacing emotional reactivity with deliberate response. Jordan Peterson calls it confronting chaos voluntarily. Instead of avoiding discomfort, you enter it with structure. You allow the feeling to exist without letting it dictate your behavior. Each time you do this, the brain forms new associations. Fear becomes curiosity. Tension becomes awareness. That's how calm grows roots. Descartes believed that clarity of thought was the foundation of freedom. When your reasoning is clouded by emotion, you lose autonomy. When you restore logic to its rightful place, you reclaim dominion over the self. The Stoics trained for this daily, just as you train your body in the gym. They practiced negative visualization, imagining loss, failure, or pain, not to suffer, but to desensitize the mind to fear. Modern psychology calls it exposure therapy. Different language, same wisdom. The more you face what you fear, the less power it holds. True calm, then, isn't found by escaping life, but by engaging it with order and intention. It's not the silence of avoidance, it's the stillness of mastery. The Stoic mind doesn't deny emotion, it refines it. It learns to let fear exist without letting it lead. That's where inner freedom begins. When you realize that serenity is not given to you, it's cultivated through discipline. This shift from reaction to reason marks the turning point in your transformation. What was once automatic panic becomes conscious choice, and from that awareness, a new kind of strength emerges, one that no external storm can touch. Transformation from reaction to response. There comes a moment when you stop being a hostage to your emotions and start becoming their observer. It doesn't happen suddenly. It begins with a pause. The instant between impulse and awareness, that fraction of a second where you choose to respond instead of react. That's the birthplace of transformation. Anxiety loses its grip, not when it disappears, but when you stop identifying with it. You begin to see that you are not your thoughts, not your fears, not even your sensations. You are the consciousness that perceives them. When you shift from reaction to response, your entire physiology changes. A reactive mind triggers the sympathetic system, fight or flight, flooding your body with cortisol and adrenaline. But a responsive mind activates the prefrontal cortex, the seat of logic and moral reasoning. Your breathing slows, your vision widens, your heartbeat steadies. The same situation that once overwhelmed you now becomes a space for clarity. This is not denial, it's control through awareness. Jordan Peterson describes this process as ordering chaos voluntarily. You confront discomfort not with panic, but with presence. You let reality unfold without trying to manipulate it. And that act of surrender, conscious, grounded, and alert, rewires your brain's response to uncertainty. The storm doesn't end, but your mind no longer trembles in its wind. You stop seeking the absence of challenge and start mastering the art of stability. Transformation is not about becoming fearless, it's about becoming unshaken by fear. Descartes would say that clarity arises when you separate truth from perception. Modern neuroscience agrees. When you recognize your emotions as signals, not identities, your prefrontal cortex overrides the emotional hijack. You begin to use thought instead of being used by it. Awareness becomes your armor. Calm becomes your strength. Joe Dispenza explains that every emotion you choose repeatedly becomes a new personality pattern. When you stop rehearsing fear and start practicing calm, your brain stops expecting chaos. It learns peace. Your heart rhythm synchronizes with your breath. Your internal chemistry harmonizes with your new mindset. What you once called anxiety transforms into sensitivity, an ability to sense and interpret the world with awareness, not panic. This is what it means to transform, not to erase what's human, but to refine it. Reaction is primitive, response is evolved. Reaction protects survival, response protects meaning. You're no longer fighting your biology, you're educating it. You're teaching your brain that danger doesn't always mean death, that uncertainty isn't failure, that silence isn't emptiness. At this stage, resilience becomes natural. You stop searching for peace in external control and start building it from within. Calm is no longer a goal, it's your default. You stop being the victim of anxiety and become the architect of composure. This is how freedom begins. Not when the mind goes quiet, but when it obeys your command. And once you reach that awareness, one truth becomes clear. Your mind was never your enemy. It was your student, waiting to be taught how to see, how to breathe, and how to be still. Closing reflection. Call to action. Your mind has been whispering to you all along. It never meant to hurt you. The tension, the overthinking, the restless nights. They were never signs of weakness, only signals misunderstood. Anxiety was not the monster, it was the messenger. It came to show you where you had lost trust in yourself, where safety had turned into vigilance, and where control had become a cage. And now that you've seen it clearly, the illusion starts to fade. The moment you recognize the pattern, it loses its authority. That's the turning point most people never reach, because they spend their lives fighting thoughts instead of observing them. You now understand that peace is not the absence of thought, it's the ability to think without drowning. You can still feel, still face uncertainty, and still remain centered. That is mastery. That is mental freedom. Marcus Aurelius wrote that the mind adapts and turns to its own purpose, the obstacle to its acting. Your anxiety, once the obstacle, has become the doorway. Every time you resist the urge to spiral, every time you breathe instead of react, you are teaching your brain a new rhythm. The same energy that once fueled fear now becomes the foundation of resilience. You have not just learned about anxiety, you have learned about power. And that power is yours to use beyond this moment. You can carry it into every silence, every decision, every day that once felt heavy. You can face chaos with structure, emotion with clarity, and uncertainty with faith. You no longer need to escape your mind. You can lead it. That is what real calm feels like. Not numbness, but presence. Not suppression, but self-command. So before this video ends, take a breath. Feel the weight leaving your shoulders. Let the thought settle in that the storm is over. Not because the world changed, but because you did. Watch this again tomorrow. Take notes on which hidden thought spoke loudest to you. Write it down, confront it, and replace it with truth. That single act of awareness will begin reshaping your brain from the inside out. If this message resonated with you, don't just close the screen. Continue the process. Subscribe if you're ready to go deeper into this journey of self-mastery, mental clarity, and peace. Share it with someone who's been silently fighting the same battle. Because awareness grows when it's shared. Your mind isn't your enemy. It's the most powerful instrument you will ever own. Train it, lead it, and let it serve your peace instead of your fear. The hidden thoughts that once controlled you are now visible, and once seen, they can no longer rule you.